his camera.
Oh, okay, then on the street, I don't know video.
Where my boy at?
He's actually at an alcohol business for training text.
Yeah, well, I got to talk to y'all.
I know
these things.
Yeah, I know. What is it?
It's all good, huh?
It's his fault.
What's that?
It's all him.
Why is it all him? I got a little friend about it. Y'all ain't know what's that? Did Jordan tell you what I said?
Are you trying to hang out?
No, now he's still lost. He's still lost.
Well, yeah, no, I think I'm lost.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's good.
It's good.
Okay.
Jordan did tell you? Let me ask you something, Jordan.
Well, he has ADHD.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about Jordan.
Jordan Meyer?
Yes.
Oh, she didn't tell you. She didn't tell me anything.
I sent a message through George. She forgot.
Oh, I was the one who I texted her. That's probably why she didn't tell me. I sent her the form.
I'll get into
Yeah. I sent her the form. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. And I was like, girl, please, I've been wanting, we're supposed to like do this.
So it's the one, right?
That's one of those cities I really visited one time.
So yeah.
And really thought we'd be back again soon. It's a nice city. Still be a decent, yeah, right? Yeah. Number one, I'm glad you're walking out with a plan. You have the direction to go to, and that's the most important thing. You know where you want to go, and you got a plan, and you're more than happy. So that's good.
Yeah, that's the man. What's the one you have in chapter?
So your chapter has just a vice president, who's
So we have the president, the vice president, and we have the treasurer. Our treasurer is actually, she's actually also a music theater. Show.
okay. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, with the snow and the Mardi Gras, everything just got kind of put out of whack. And so trying to squeeze it all in. It's very little bit of time between now and when we start.
One of my drivers was telling me about the snow here and about the fact that I said, because that storm didn't do anything to Charlotte. And we've only had flurries twice. We never really had any snow to speak of.
Everything shut down.
12 inches.
Yeah, everything shut down basically for 2 days. It was fun. I was in GC that one day, and they canceled all the flights. They canceled all the flights back to New Orleans for Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, so we need the last flight out.
Right?
And then it was good because everything shut down.
Yeah. So I think that they really took care of the long run with it.
Yeah, everything was like, I don't know, a ghost town.
Yeah.
And they knew about it. It was the most snow we had had. Like I said, we got more snow that day than New York had.
I was really impressed by it because they said snow in New Orleans, and I was really expecting Florida.
Right.
I was expecting, dusting and kind of thing. You get the plow on and you're done. You got ice tonight and then you're done in the morning.
Right.
12 inches of snow.
And yeah, it was like,
A friend of mine just texted me, I can hear y'all talking, you're streaming live. I said, oh, okay. And we can't, and they were saying we can't control it from the end, because it's all around the corner in another room, so.
No, we're just trying to.
why? We were looking out our windows and like, this still
Oh,
snows. It is still snows.
let me check this other mic, because you got a question.
Oh, everything that was.
mic so you can use it for the intro. You also use it for we'll get started, and oh, it's 27, we got a couple minutes. We'll get started in 3 minutes as we're live streaming.
Oh my gosh.
All well in DC, Nicole? What's up, LJ? Just watched my Xavier women's basketball team blow. You watch this? They lost. I'm out. We lost. We had ladies had a 10-point lead at halftime. They were in control in the third quarter. That team went. They just dominated. I scored about 15 points in the third quarter, and I was at. So that's good. That was if you're watching the game too. I wasn't on it.
Oh, yeah, I've always
All right, we'll get started. So we are live streaming, so I'm gonna start on time.
That was loud.
You know what? You can stay there because you will be on camera so we can see you. I think.
Yep.
Let's do that.
Gotcha. Good evening, everybody. A little too close. And I wanted to welcome you all to the NABJ Loino's State of Diversity in Journalism talk, where we have our esteemed panelists joining us both in person and virtually. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. A lot of work was put into this, and to be able to have you guys here sharing in this wonderful conversation is something that we really appreciate. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Loyola University. I'm Gregory Lee, visiting professor here at Loyola, and I just want to thank you, everyone, for being here, and everyone watching online for this important discussion tonight. First, I want to thank our outstanding dean, Dr. Cheryl Kennedy Haydell, who brought me here for this opportunity to be at this university. It's a big privilege for me to be here with these great students here. Before we get started, we will take questions from the audience later on. I won't be just asking questions, and our Loyola student chapter members will be handing out the microphones to you guys tonight. Tonight we will have a crucial discussion. Thank you. Yay, it was better. Before we get started tonight, tonight we'll have a crucial discussion on the state of diversity in the media industry. At a time when journalism faces significant challenges, such as historic job cuts and evolving newsroom priorities and a persistent lack of diversity, especially in leadership roles at major networks like MSNBC, CNN, and local news outlets nationwide, this conversation is both timely and necessary. But before we begin, I want to honor Marion M. Stokes and John S. Stokes, Jr., two remarkable individuals whose legacies underscore the power of media in shaping history. Marion Stokes was a visionary archivist, activist, and journalist who, over 3 decades, meticulously recorded television news, preserving narratives that might have otherwise been lost or altered. Her husband, John S. Stokes, Jr., was a dedicated educator and civil rights advocate who played an essential role in her mission. Together, their efforts were not merely about collecting history, but ensuring accountability in media and preserving truth for future generations. As the holder of the Stokes Chair here at Loyola University, I embrace that responsibility to critically examine media representation, advocate for the truth, and promote an industry that reflects the diverse voices of our society. To delve into these pressing issues, we are privileged to have 3 distinguished leaders who are at the forefront of advocating for journalists of color. First, we have Ken Lemon, president of the National Association of Black Journalists. He is a seasoned reporter at WSOC TV in Charlotte, North Carolina. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Ken has earned multiple accolades, including an Edward R. Moore Award and 3 Emmy Awards. His leadership at NABJ continues the organization's 50-year legacy of championing black journalists and striving for greater diversity and equity in newsrooms. That's right, this year is NABJ's 50th anniversary. Our birthday is on December 12th, and we will celebrate all year. Next, we have Dunia Elvir, president of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. She has 14 Emmys and a news anchor with Telemundo LA. Her extensive career has been instrumental in advocating for fair representation and inclusion of Latino journalists and communities in news coverage. And NAHJ will be starting a student chapter here on Loyola University, and next year, in 2026, the National Convention will be here in New Orleans, and we'll look forward to that. And joining us virtually, well, online, is my friend Nicole Dungca, president of the Asian American Journalists Association. She serves as an investigative reporter at the Washington Post. Her impactful work has delved into critical issues such as systematic racism and social justice, earning her recognition as a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
Having me. Sorry I couldn't be there.
It's all good. We can hear you right now. So thank you guys for being here and taking the time for this necessary discussion. So let's get into it. So the first question, with DEI under attack from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, how will your organizations ensure it will get the usual support from funders for your annual convention, which is an engine driver for each of your organizations? Mr. President?
Well, the first thing is to be very strategic in how we do that. And for our part, we started with that in Chicago last year. And the first thing that we did is I opened up my suite all day long. We had the president of ABC News in. We had CNN, we had TNN, we had the New York Times. We had as many people as we can get through there. What we wanted to do is make sure that we build lasting, strong relationships that are going to benefit our members and journalists, not only in that moment, but here out. And so those discussions began there, and we continue those discussions. We continue those discussions with news leaders and people who head organizations, even in the face of what's going on now. And surprisingly, the response that we get is that there are a lot of people out there who believe that diversity is necessary at the highest levels of media. And that has been something that we take heart to. But also, you know, in this industry, Greg, being a president, that, you know, saying and doing is not just it. And so we make sure that we follow up, and we're there. And when necessary, when we see what you're doing, we're there to assist, but we also make sure that they are doing the work as well to make sure that we're well represented in every area. And so when you begin to do that, then it's kind of like Pew Research said at one point, they talked about local and national and how people do view them differently. Interpersonal relationships matter. Being with someone in that space with them is important. Talking to them face to face and understanding their concerns and their limitations, their barriers, their challenges, and the places they want to build also help us to build win-win-win relationship with sponsor partners that I believe is going to last through any challenge that'll be thrown at us.
And how about NAHJ? How you guys are thinking and planning out for your convention this year and dealing with what's going on in the environment today?
It's very similar to what Ken is explaining, because this doesn't start in the same year that you're going to start with the convention. This actually started years ago. So those relationships, like he's talking about, they're key. Having a community, understanding that these organizations that are, mobilizing hundreds of journalists need us as much as we need them. As journalists, we need to provide for our families, and for that we need a job, but they need us. It's not like they're going to have someone, an accountant, reporting. They're not going to be able to, overcome their challenges too. So it's the relationship, it's that connection, it's being there. When they come to these meetings, like Ken mentioned, you're not only talking about the financial support you need for your organization, we're talking about the human need that they have and the needs that we have as an organization for these companies to bring the numbers that we need to represent us. At the end of the day, they can operate with any of these organizations.
And Nicole, how are you guys handling it?
Obviously, we have a similar situation. We have those relationships that have been lasting for a really long time. All of these organizations here have been around for decades. AAJA was started in 1981, and we've been working at this for a long time, so we don't think the support disappears overnight, but of course, when we do see attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we do have to be very vigilant about how that may affect organizations like ours. But if anything, I think we have seen a groundswell of support from the people within our organization who know that this is now so important, more important than ever, now that we are seeing some companies step back from their prior commitments. A lot of the companies that we work with, a lot of the newsrooms we work with haven't, but we want to make sure that they know we're watching and that we're being vigilant no matter what the message is from other places within, whether it's politics or other industries, that we know that our organizations are going to stay strong because we've been doing this for years, we've been raising money for years, and we have many people who are behind us who are going to help us on our mission. And I think at moments like these, when it's difficult, people realize the importance of our organizations more than ever.
Yes, that's thank you guys for that. I'm going to start off with the second question for Dunia, for all you guys. What can be done to ensure that diversity efforts don't take a back seat when newsrooms are downsizing? We saw earlier this week, the Chicago Sun-Times had some major layoffs this week, and other organizations are going through the same things. What can we do to make sure that journalists of color are not disproportionately impacted by that?
The first thing that I think is first, think instead of just going with our emotions. We've seen these cuts since December. They didn't just start it last week. But this is cyclical. This is not something new. In 2008, I was one of the hundreds of people that lost their job. And the organization, what we're doing now that I'm involved in the decision making, we're inviting those that lost their job to come to these meetings, to have a real understanding of what's happening and how we can support them. Not only saying, hey, we're here for you. Oh, NAHJ is here to give you a hand. No, we're actually offering now hardship memberships in different situations to help them be in front of the recruiters when they come to the convention. And prior to the convention, during this time, I'm sending messages to the people that are contacting us, and that way we can give the person that space that they need and feel that they are visible. Because at the end of the day, when we lose our job, and I remember it was 2008 when Telemundo canceled the show that I was working for. They called me at 9 a.m. Eastern time, was 6 a.m. LA time. You're in your bed, and I have kids. I have a lot of kids. I have 8 kids. At that moment, my youngest was 1 year old. I mean, I couldn't even process the phone call. So I always bring myself and try to put myself in the shoes of our members. What are they feeling right now? What I wanted to hear in that moment. I didn't want to hear someone to tell me, I'm so sorry, Dunia, I'm with you. No, I wanted someone to come and tell me, hey, these are the resources. This is what you can do. This is how I can help you to review your resume. These are all of the resources we have, and try to create those paths, because when we lose our job in such a abruptly way, our emotions take over. So the organization right now, it's just trying to come to each and every member that approach us to be able to support them with resources.
Nicole.
I mean, we have a really similar situation too, where we try to give as many resources as we can to people who have lost their jobs. But I think part of it is also making sure that we have our various members in positions of leadership. So when it does come time to have these cuts, which unfortunately have hit a lot of our members from all of these organizations, we do need to have those people in the room who are thinking about diversity. And I think to every organization here, we all have these programs where we are trying to make sure that people of color are at the top of the newsrooms or at the top of the companies, the media companies, so that they will have this awareness of how to not disproportionately hurt various populations when it comes to these cuts. And you know, we've been doing a lot of work, but we still have a lot of work to do. It's kind of a perennial thing that we could say all the time. We did a broadcast snapshot through AAJA where we looked at the top 20 markets, and more than 70% of them didn't have a proportional number of on-air anchors, AAPI anchors proportional to the population. So, you know, there's a lot of work that's still to be done, and we need people in positions of leadership who will be able to see when these cuts come down that we're not affecting all of these populations that we're covering, because it's so important for us to be represented in the room and in our coverage.
What you Ken?
I think the most important thing you said is disproportionate, because one of the things that we did trying to be strategic and trying to forecast ahead is to begin to talk to some of these media companies and understand what's coming down the pipe. And so the way that you can know whether it's disproportionate, first is by working with not only the people on the ground within those different institutions, but also your local chapters are usually the first people to see and catch it. I know that when I'm done here this weekend, I'm going to spend some time up at Hampton Roads, where they've seen a lot of their members lose jobs because of one of the layoffs that happened just a couple of weeks ago. And they were the first people to sound the alarm to make sure that we're aware. Understanding what we were told last year, and this is what we were told over and over again by broadcast in particular, by broadcast media leaders. The next 2 quarters of this coming year are going to be difficult. There will be more layoffs, and we anticipate at some point people will begin to understand the rhythm of the new administration, going back to that first question, because you can't sell ads for people who don't want to buy ads, and you can't pay people unless people do buy them. And so trying to get an understanding of what happens there, knowing how difficult that was going to be, one of the first things that we did, and I insisted that we do, is do not wait on NABJ grants. We open it up at the beginning of the year. We open it up at the beginning of the year not only to serve those people that we know are going to be losing, but those individuals who have also lost back in December and November. We gave away $15,000 worth of grants. In addition to that, to every one of those media owners who told me it's coming, I said, what can we do to make sure that those individuals who are there, who may be standing in position, have a better opportunity of keeping their jobs? And we took away 3 important points, and we went back and we told them those 3 important points. Number 1, be able to do multiple things in your position, be able to work into management, be able to stretch yourself and work in a way that people see your value there. Because sometimes what happens is we get up every day, we do the job, we go home, we get up, we do the job, we go home, and we don't think about what it means to have managers look and see us until it comes to that evaluation time. So when we went back, and I went back to our local chapters and I went to some of the task forces, I said, these are the 3 things you need to be telling people. When we met with Council of Presidents, tell them these 3 things, because changes are coming down the pipe, and some of those changes are unavoidable. But if you do these 3 things, you make yourself valuable in a way that someone goes, let's not scratch that name off of the list. So we wanted to do that. In addition to that, last year, understanding, and again, this year we're doing this, for the first time, NABJ offered scholarship grants for the National Convention. Because that job fair means so much to an individual who doesn't have a job, but we were giving scholarships, we were giving for the registration. 15 scholarships were given that covered their flight. 15 scholarships were given to people that would also cover their hotel and their food. Show up, be there, be present. Don't worry about what it costs to be there. We'll get you there. So when we finished last year in Chicago, I went back to staff and said, we have to replicate that again because we anticipate this happening once more. And we need to make sure that those individuals out there who are still looking for work and for opportunities can get to this job fair, and that our employers are ready and prepared to offer something of value to our members. We're seeing that on that end. We're already working towards making sure those scholarships are available. Not only, and I had this wonderful conversation on the way over here that was poignant. I had a student that I met before, and I hand out my information. He called me up. He said, I just graduated in December, and I'm looking for opportunities. Last year, we started 5 of those scholarships also for students. We're doing that again this year. I mentioned to our VP how important it is that he walked out of college knowing a plan and having an opportunity walking out that door. It's so difficult for so many college graduates to step out and not be able to walk into their field. And 2 years ago, you could walk into it in almost any market. They were willing to pick you up and take you on. And now it's not the same. So we want to get you there, get you trained, get you in front of employers, get you in front of people who are going to give that opportunity for you so you step out of college moving quickly.
Thank you for that. And I want to transition because you mentioned leadership. We're talking about the leadership levels. And the question is, we're going to start with you, Nicole. While diversity has improved in some areas, there's still a stark lack of people of color in top editorial and executive positions. What systematic changes need to happen to ensure diverse leadership in media organizations? And then I want to do, and I want you to think about this too, because this question is going to be part 2, because it reflects leadership. Given the way terms like DEI, woke, CRT, and Black Lives Matter have been weaponized in public discourse, what role do you think the media leadership should play in reframing and reclaiming the true meaning of those concepts? And how can journalists balance presenting diverse perspectives? Because I believe leadership reflects how language is shaped. So Nicole, I just want to start with you about the lack of diverse leadership and how that impacts what we are seeing today.
Yeah, I mean, there have obviously been strides in this area. If you look at how many editors-in-chief or executive editors or people of color, there are more now. But it also just does not reflect the population of America, this incredibly diverse tapestry of people. And there aren't that many, there isn't a huge pool of people sometimes. And so one of the biggest things that AAJA does is make sure that that pipeline exists, because the way that leaders are often tapped is because they've been doing great work from the very beginning of their career. And so for organizations like ours, we try to make sure that there are programs at every single level of a journalist's career. So we have a high school program, we have a college program, we have a mid-career program. We have a program that's specifically for people who want to get into leadership so that they know how to navigate these newsrooms so that they can be at the top of them at one point, or figure out what they want to do next. And so that's very important. I think making sure that the pipeline is very diverse is one of the biggest things, because these people aren't coming from nowhere. They have to be coming from being the best reporters, being the best broadcasters, being the best producers, and making sure that every level is strong and filled with people of color is so important for that. When it comes to, DEI efforts, I think the biggest thing that we have to do is just be very precise about, what is being attacked and what it means. I think people use DEI in different ways when they mean people of color, when that's really not the case. It's not discriminatory to make sure that your pipeline has many people of color your pipeline has many people of color in it. It's not discriminatory to necessarily just want a diverse newsroom. And that's essentially what all of our organizations are doing. We're not asking for anything that is taking away opportunities from other people. We're just making sure that all of our groups have equal opportunities when it comes to being at these newsrooms that cover the communities that we all live in.
Thank you very much. Ken.
Yeah, so That DEI piece was
Yeah.
so big.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, at NABJ, we're used to making a phone call and getting an immediate response. We call, we send an email, a news director, general manager, publisher, city editor picks up. It's NABJ on the other line. Our first couple of things, advocacy issues that we had to do outside of that, I kind of shook a little bit. What's going to happen? Here's what pleased me. People responded immediately. And one of them, we had to say to them, look, we're looking at the top. Number one, there are a couple of people who are no longer there who should be there, and we're looking at the top. And because of the research and talking to some of our members, we're looking at the bottom too. You don't have anything up top. You lost people. You're not feeding at the bottom. This was a position I had to take because people need to know what the mission is of the organization. That mission cannot change no matter who decides to use what language, in which way, and how they hurl it at other people and how they use it against other people. The purpose of us being here cannot, will not change, and we have to call people out, even if some of those people are folks who are supporters or sponsors, who have relationships and partnerships with us. The response was good. In many cases, they go, yeah, we got that problem. Yeah, we have that issue. We've been able to, working within members of the board who are calling on these individuals, we've been able to wrestle extra opportunity, work with them to make sure that folks are not being left out from this point forward. That takes follow-up, though. It's not just that one phone call. It takes calling them back up a couple of times and saying, where are we on this? This is what we talked about. How's that going? In addition to that, I'm always very solutions-oriented. Like, what are we doing as an organization? The one thing that I always saw for us is this Leadership Academy must grow. We have what we call a Leadership Academy. That Leadership Academy takes people who are department heads and vice department heads, and our moderator here, fortunately, is a mentor for that Leadership Academy, and we prepare them to be publishers and general managers and leaders of news operations. And so if we want to be intentional about growth, what we need to do is we need to speak to what that pathway looks like. So we're beginning to begin a 4-tier pathway that will end with the Leadership Academy that propels you to be that highest level or even corporate, and then working down from there. That is introducing college students to what it means to be more than a byline, to what it means to be more than a sig out, and then supporting them as they become emerging journalists, those first 0 to 5 years in, and keeping them towards that management track, building a middle management that then feeds the Leadership Academy. And by the time you're done there, I can take an individual with a thought in their head as a college student, support them up through their career to a place where they also always have mentorship, always have guidance, always have learning opportunities, so they cannot be denied. And then we can walk in the door and say, I know it exists because this is it. This is what it looks like, and this is what we work through. And this year, we're beginning the first phase, the first cohort of that middle management, and that is the one when we talk to media managers that they're most excited about. You're going to give me executive producers. You're going to give me some of those editors that we need. And so it is beginning to make sure that we're working within this organization to feed, and I know for a fact that this will not be completely done in my presidency, if I'm successful as I hope I will be. But we have to do it for the future because we need you in those places, and we need to be thinking strategy now and how to get you there and keep you there now so that we'll be successful in the future while also calling out people that we know need to do better.
I do.
One thing that I can say as organizations, NABJ, AAJA, NSJ, we are already supporting the students becoming leaders because you guys have your chapters. So you guys have your board, president, vice president. You're learning from very early on that it's not only becoming a reporter or a photographer, it's also learning how to make decisions for your student body in your school. In NHJ, what we're doing, our main hashtag or mission is always more Latinos in news. Last year, that hashtag changed, or we did a second one that is more Latinos in news leadership. Last year, we started with the Adelante Academy, which is a cohort that right now we speak, this is the second year, this is the second group of members. It's a small group, and they are in Columbia University, and they are getting only only leadership structure. It's a very intense 6-month program. So anybody that is a member participates, but they have to be in the middle, mid-level to be able to qualify for this program. It's completely free. They don't pay anything, and they can go and pursue to be at a higher level. That's one of the things that we're doing for leadership. Another thing that we're doing is also supporting our high school, college, and this year is the new year that we have retired members and teaching them to brand themselves. I'm a journalist. This is my 35th year working as a journalist, but I was talking to Ken earlier. I don't know, I studied management and I have a master's in business administration. So I think I'm the first president in NAHJ that has the business mentality. For me, it's important to have a business mentality because I am the product. So the idea is to teach each and every member or the students, you are a product. So you have to present that product and make these companies believe and see that they won't get what they're looking for if they don't bring you as the ultimate product. So one of those steps that we're taking, since I'm the newest president, we created task forces, and one of them is management task force. And this is not to teach management to the staff or the board. This is management to teach anybody how to manage their career, how they can learn from the CEOs, the general managers, the presidents. So these are different series of webinars and sessions that we are having for our members. And also, part of what you're talking about, the cultural, the leadership in the newsroom, the cultural differences are necessary. There's no way that we're just gonna go away. There's no way we can be avoided, because at the end of the day, I grew up in Watts, next to Compton. Someone growing up in Beverly Hills will not bring the source credibility that I bring coming from a poor community. So there's no way, as much as whoever wants to erase us, it won't work. So we have to be very firm with that and understand who are we, what we bring. Hey, keep attacking me. It's okay, I'm still here, I'm not going anywhere. So that's the mentality that I personally think we have to share with the students, because I understand, the situation is difficult, but if we're making them feel, okay, you are the source credibility that we need in the newsrooms, they're gonna start feeling confident, and that's how we start building leaders since very early on.
And I'm gonna have another question, but you could grab this one as this is off the list, but when I'm hearing you guys are presidents, and you meet with all of these executives, top people, what do you say to them in terms of how, okay, right now we have a situation where how are you talking to them about controlling language, how media, because I consume a lot of media, I know a lot of our audience consume media, and what I see is that we're behind in terms of how the news is being presented, in terms of the question I mentioned before about how the language is being not as precise. And as communicators, we need to do a better job. How are you articulating that to the leaders you're talking to right now in terms of not only just getting more, people of color in leadership positions, but what are you doing now with the coverage in terms of language and being used and how to cover this moment that we're in? Anyone of you guys can take that.
Yeah, it is making sure one of the entities that we work with has what they call a news audit, and they sit down and they go back and they audit the news, and they audit and they take a look at things like, are we representing well? How are we representing? How are people showing up? It's making sure that as things change, programs like that don't change, that continues. It is calling out people. Most recently, we had to call out one entity in Denver because of an image they put on the front of their magazine that said, I believe it said "armed and dangerous," and the image was of a young black male with a gun in his backpack, and we called him to the cuff on that. We not only called him to the cuff, but we also work locally with folks. It is use of language. And one of those things, some words that are said on air that should never be said on air, things that are presented on air, images that are presented on air. In the last year, we have worked closely in places like Portland. We have worked closely in places like St. Louis, not only working with our local chapter, not only working with our members at some of those entities, but also working with the community. Because we know one thing, you're bound
If you are an entity, the product that you sell has to have somebody out there willing to purchase it. And sometimes you need to hear it from the community. And so it is working with people within the community to make sure that as we step forward, we say not only these voices are important to this community, but that you hear people from that community saying how they feel about what just happened. That's a powerful impact. And so it is not only that advocacy with us alone, but is also when we need to in tandem with people in the community who know the importance of adequate representation. And then the other key piece is making sure that there's the right management at the top. Yeah. The right management at the top often catches a lot of mistakes. Yeah. That shouldn't be on the air, that shouldn't go out. And we're successful in a couple of places of changing systems. That I really love, because we're moving more towards automated systems. Those automated systems don't stop and think and look like we do. And so one of those automated systems, they said, oh, we need extra pictures real quick. We're going to break. And they grabbed the picture that never should have made air, that said horrible things about black people and used bad language and imagery that was awful, that I wouldn't show anywhere. And we were able to not only step in, but say, look, that can't happen again. What are you doing to change that system? And we not only changed that system for that entity, for that television station, we changed it corporately. That means all the stations owned by that entity all changed that method.
Anyway,
go ahead.
I just wanted to add with that, because as soon as you made the question, it made me think of the undocumented community. You know, it's a time that we're hearing illegals everywhere. And I sent a letter to the entire membership, and we also contacted different people to giving them guidelines how to refer about the undocumented immigrants. They're not illegal. They're undocumented immigrants. They're not immigrants only, because I hear that in the mainstream too. You know, immigrants, I'm an immigrant, but I'm not undocumented. So we send a letter. We are trying to be there. We have a book, like a guidance book of the language that we share already with all of the news directors. And this was done in 2020, it was before me. And this year we are updating this book with the proper language, moving the book based on how our communities are changing too, and the proper language that we are expecting everybody to respect. And this is not only for members, mainly for the news directors, that managing editor that will make the decision, because if they have this book in their hands and they want to do the right thing, and we have, in our case, more Latinos in news leadership, we're expecting that proper language get used.
Nicole, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think every single journalist of color knows what it's like to be in a newsroom and be called upon to be the representative of their race. I mean, I think sometimes it can be frustrating, but other times it's really necessary for us to be able to call out something that may be stereotypical, something that may be inappropriate, and be able to stop these kinds of inappropriate stereotypes and language from going out on air or actually be printed. And that's just something that our organizations have actually taken pains to formalize. If you just heard from the other organizations, we all have these different arms that really are being vigilant about the ways in which we are making sure the media doesn't perpetuate these stereotypes that have been so damaging to all of our representative groups. At AAJA, we have a media watch committee that actually, is on basically standing by every time there is some sort of term that might be offensive in some way. I mean, we have a style guide that we launched last year that we send to major newsrooms and major organizations so that they know that some terms, they shouldn't use some terms, or they should be more precise in other terms. I mean, there are some examples that we've done just recently where the term kamikaze drone was being used basically for drones that were self-detonating. And there was a lot of that use when you're talking about war zones like in Ukraine. And we were, as the Asian American Journalists Association, saying that's not an appropriate way to even use that term, and we're able to tell different newsrooms that they should be using different terms. And then when COVID actually first started up in 2020, we noticed that newsrooms were using pictures of Asian people with masks, even though they weren't necessarily even related to COVID or the coronavirus. They were coming from they were just people who were on the subway who were wearing masks or something like that. And so we want people to be to know that they are perpetuating some of these stereotypes and that we're watching. And so we do things like the Media Watch Committee to make sure that we're actually helping to shape the coverage in the sense that we're making it more accurate and more accurate for our communities so that we don't repeat the mistakes of many newsrooms. I mean, all of the communities that we're from have had very hurtful things in the news media, and a lot of times it happened because they didn't have people of color in those newsrooms. Now that we're in those newsrooms, we're really taking pains to make sure that we don't make those kinds of mistakes again.
Before we continue, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and Matthew will get to you, and I will see, and then I'll get your questions from the audience. Ken, let me give you a question, and everyone with their respective organizations. NABJ this year is turning 50 years old, as I mentioned earlier. So, looking at where we were then and where we are today, what progress has been made? And what are the challenges or gaps that you see today as we head into another 50 years?
Yeah, I think the scary thing for a lot of people is a worrying concern when you look out and you see efforts and steps that are being taken that look like they attempt to reverse that. NABJ, when we began, we were pushed out with the thrust of the Kerner report. That is a government report put together by a commission team that said we're not doing enough in certain communities. I don't know that we'd see something like that now, where the government would step forward and say that. And a lot of people will tell you, and I agree with them, they feel like the opposite is happening, that there's an effort to ignore that. Your question again talked about where we are in 50 years. The mission is still as important now as it was then for different reasons. And I think over the years, it's important for different reasons, but it's so critical right now. It is so critical that we're vigilant, that we're working, that we're calling truth to power, that we're making sure that individuals know that we hear, we're not going anywhere, we need to be heard, these voices will not be shut out, they are indeed a part of the community, and they deserve the opportunity that they recognized more than 50 years ago that prompted some individuals to say, now is the time to organize and make sure we fight this good fight.
We hear from your organization, your members, Dunia, about what's the state of journalism and what's going on, what we're seeing with the attack on the First Amendment. What are you hearing from your members in terms of what the organization can do to really combat this?
You know what? Thinking about that and thinking with the other question you had with Ken, I just have to be realistic and think, I can't avoid thinking years. 40 years ago, when NAHJ started, we were less than 6% in this nation as Hispanics. Today, we're almost 20%.
Yep.
So if they couldn't stop us and they couldn't erase us when we were less than 6%, you think they're going to be able to do it now that we are 20%? So what we tell our members is we got to continue with our mission, educating, advocating. Advocacy, it's key. And also looking for more Latinos every day in journalism, from high schools, colleges, even those people that are retired. They are key to make NAHJ to go, in our case, other 40 years. We're 10 years younger than you. So I really think that if we stay focused in educating, advocating, we're going to be able to overcome whatever comes our way. Because, I'm a mother, so I cannot avoid thinking from that perspective. If things are super comfortable all the time, we won't grow. So all of this discomfort times are necessary. It makes me think of the eagle. The eagle has to go through the really cruel process of plucking its own wings out to be able to fly to the higher level. So when it comes and gets the prey, it has the elevation and the speed that requires, and the eagle has to get rid of the peak to grow a stronger peak. Okay, we're going through really difficult times, but instead of getting rid of NABJ, NSJ, or AAJA, we're just gonna get stronger. Because look at us, the three of us representing the three organizations, the biggest three organizations of journalists in US, together in Loyola University. That speaks louder than words.
Nicole, what are your members saying in AAJA during this moment right now? I know you're hearing from them. What are you and your board telling them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you do have to look at the progress in some ways. I mean, we were started in 1981 by just a handful of journalists who didn't see themselves within the newsrooms or accurately reflected. And now, we have, close to 2,000 members. Like that kind of growth, like Dunia was saying, I mean, those are really, really exciting numbers, but we know that we can do even better. And we know that there are different things that are going to, impede that progress. 2000, when we're talking about 2008, 2009, like there are very real economic issues within this industry that will take back some of the progress, but we're just here to continue advocating for our members and for a free press. I mean, that's where we need to go. I mean, just the other day, we joined many other organizations in putting a statement out because the Voice of America has been targeted, and we want to make sure that organizations like that continue to be independent and a free press. We're going to keep fighting for those kinds for independence. We're going to keep fighting for strong journalism. And we're not going to be stopped, like Dunia was saying. I mean, we just started an endowment drive because we want AAJA to last way longer than any of us are, in this position. We want it to last forever. And we know that we have the membership and we have the support that will make sure that we will be very strong into the future, no matter what journalism is looking like 20, 30 years down the road.
And you mentioned, Nicole, an alliance. You signed a letter, and other organizations did that. And that was leading to my next question about, given what we're seeing, especially with the White House Correspondents Association dealing with the change of how the White House press room is being formed. How are your organizations working with other groups such as SBJ, the White House Corps, the Freedom Forum, First Amendment Centers? How are your organizations coming together to try to fight? You mentioned the Voice of America. Are you leaders are talking to other leaders organizations? And what are you talking about? How you are planning or forming an alliance to make sure our press freedoms stay intact? How you guys are talking about that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that we all have in common is that after some of the things that happened, we called a meeting last month. And we're beginning to work together. So affinity groups are now working on how we redress some of these issues. And one of the things that was told to me that I learned from a government official about what's going on and how you resist what's going on is do it with the broad coalition. If you want to be effective, do it with the broad coalition. So we signed on with over 40 agencies in regards to the AP. Being moved out of the White House because of their decision about calling the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico. In addition to that, what we did is we began to work, and we're now going to be working consistently on ways to find efforts where we have like issues that we can respond together as organizations. And I am still in contact with people from other entities where we can make that even more broad. I think what's happening now is that we all see journalism under attack, and in so being, democracy under attack. When we aren't there to make sure that we're getting the truth and we're fighting to get the truth, and there are barriers being put up to that, while that impacts us in specific, it doesn't just impact us only. And those who see what this is doing to the country and to our communities and to the people who rely on us for the truth and look to us to make sure that they're getting that, we're finding ways to coalesce. And that's a needed thing.
Yeah, we are also connecting with the other organizations. Like you said, we just got on the phone, all of us, and we were able to start creating a plan and a strategy. What are we going to do? And our vice president connected with the White House Association, and he's in DC, and they're working together too. And like I said before, you know, it's like tough times just make us stronger. And far from ending with these organizations, I'm learning now that we're just getting more together, we're more organized, we have strategic plans better than what we had before, because he was working, she's been working, I'm working, and we were all working parallel. Now we're working all integrated instead of everybody working in one line. You know, this came and forced us to be more united, the same purpose, the same goal, you know, but integrated, respecting each and every individuality of the organizations, but looking for a common goal.
Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Dunia and Ken and I all already talk, I think, is a really good start to the work that we're starting to do. This has been something that we've always talked to each other. The journalism industry is very small for you students.
Yes, it is.
Because it's a very small industry and you're going to know everybody. And so we're always working together. I'm in DC, so I am talking to people for the White House Correspondents Association. All of our organizations have scholarships with that organization, actually. So we are all always kind of in conversations about what's happening, what they're hearing. And I think, you know, both Ken and Dunia talked about it. I mean, there's strength in numbers, and us working together, we want to make sure that people know, you know, if you come for one of us, you come for us all, and we're all going to be working together so that we're all represented and that we're all stronger, because that's the way that we're going to have the best journalism industry that we can have.
We have a question from the audience.
Thank you so much. You guys are my friend and you are my colleague, and thank you for the award from NABJ for my team of 27 when I was with NBC. My name is Lucy Bustamante. Absolutely, absolutely. I want to give a shout out to Dominique Tolliver, who is a graduate here, who also won the student award. Yes, the same year that we won this award, I had to bring it to say, can we take a picture? Because Chicago was crazy and we couldn't take a picture. I'm now with one of our local stations. So proud to have Dunia as our president. And shout out to Diane Schnell, who motivated everyone to start the first NAHJ New Orleans, Louisiana chapter. So thank you for bringing us all together for the first time on the local level. And also Tom Yamas is a 2001 graduate from here. So we have a nice little trifecta going. So my question is this. A lot of times these moral injuries and the microaggressions that we've had to survive in our workplaces, they don't amount to things that have legal footing. And so I would love to know, as I was doing this project, and my last story that I did as an NBC reporter was a woman who was a federally protected whistleblower who reported her boss at the VA, who was a former general, for sending pornographic text messages to his underlings during COVID. And when she reported it, she was the one that got fired and he was allowed to retire. So one of the things that we were investigating were, how many people that should have been fired were allowed to retire on our tax dollars? And she fought it. She got a good attorney. She was reinstated. She went back to work yesterday. So, well, watch for that update.
All right.
It took months.
It's a tease.
Yes, there you go. So that happened in March. So this is how slow our legal system is. And how much can we take monetarily, emotionally? So I would want to know if you think our chapters and our diversity groups are ready to evolve to support people at that level. And then also I would love to know, just like we've seen You know, I'm a product of Catholic school education. I had a great experience, but I know that some of my colleagues didn't. And we've seen the Catholic Church have to completely restructure because they should have just fired the humans that were doing horrible things to children instead of moving them around, right? They have lost so much money as an entity because they didn't just get rid of them. We see that in the corporate structures. We've worked for awesome managers and we've worked for sexual harassers that should have been fired a long time ago. And as a female journalist, I always mentor my people coming under me. Don't sign the dotted line. It is not your secret to keep. It is their secret. It is not your secret. So sign the contract, get your money, but on the way out, if anything happens to you, get a lawyer. That is not your secret to keep. That is theirs. What are we doing as organizations to be able to eradicate non-disclosure agreements that only protect the top? And then they tell you, we don't have enough money for the next 2 years. When really, how much money have they spent protecting those people that could have hired 5 of us?
So the question is around non-disclosure agreements. Here's what I can tell you. The best thing that we do is advise people throughout that process. The first thing I do anytime I deal with anybody dealing with an advocacy issue, the first thing I ask them is, how are you doing? Because usually when you face some sort of wrongdoing, you feel kind of alone. You feel like you're by yourself, and you feel very much like a mini David going up against an advanced Goliath. How are you doing? And then what is it that you would like us to do at the end? That's the key. I had one interesting person on the way out the door say this to us: make sure it doesn't happen to somebody else. I'm good. I'm employable. Matter of fact, I got somebody talking to me tomorrow, but I don't want the person who steps into my place to face the same problems I faced. When it comes to that, we have people that we can bring in, and when you have an issue, we ask you, come to us, because you're right, because once you sign, you're on, like you are on. And some of them will hold you to it, quite honestly. There are some people who've gotten away with not doing that, but that's when it's been huge glitz and glamour when they step out and nobody wanted to be on the other side of that. So we have individuals who can advise. You know, what do you do in that situation? How do you handle this individual situation? We do the best we can to make sure that we're available to people, because sometimes some of those folks will say to you, you got a time limit on this. Like, this isn't forever. We've got to take next steps. And so trying to make sure that we are available, that we're around, that we make ourselves as accessible as possible to individuals before you get in that position. One of the things that I did is I talked with an individual that I know what they were walking out the door. They were literally, I said to them very honestly, look, it sounds like they're moving you towards, they're building paperwork on you right now. And then we together began working on what that next step looks like. It sounds innocent, right? But what it does is it gives you freedom on the way out the door. You're not packing your box to go home. You're packing your box to move to the next desk. And so when somebody slips a piece of paper in front of you now, you've got control. You've got the ability to say, what you're offering me there doesn't compare to what I'm going to get for the freedom of talking and knowing that there's a check around the corner. So it is trying to make sure that we're available to people so they trust us. Oftentimes what happens in advocacy is folks get really embarrassed when they're being walked out the door, when they know that it's coming, and they don't come to us until it's the very last moment. And there's almost nothing we can do at that point, but make sure that we're available to them.
And you guys have comments? You agree? Okay, good.
It's the same because we have same systems. It's so.
Yeah. So, Ken, you mentioned something in it. I think it will apply to, our student body. One of the things, the challenges going through this time right now is supporting our student chapters. And you were mentioning about how some student chapters may not get funding.
Yes.
From student government associations because of the new DEI rules. Mm-hmm. How are you mentioned, how are you trying to do with your chapters with NABJ? And I'm sure, Nicole, I don't know if you heard that from your students and their student chapters in AAJA and your campus. What are NABJ doing to try to help student chapters if they're not getting the funding they need for activities on campus?
So what's happening here, just so you understand, is that, and I'm glad you said DEI rules, because a lot of people are taking them as laws. These are executive orders many times that are being enforced in a way that makes it feel like a law, but is not a law. So what we had is students who have these chapters that are recognized on campus, who get paid student money from student tuition to every group and organization on campus. But because they are an NABJ chapter, they're telling them you can't use that money. Because we have people like, you know, these individuals here who want to go onto a certain campus and begin to train, they're being told we can't let you in. Which is so interesting to me, because I just spoke to a group at a predominantly white institution about our regional conference, and one of the white people looked at me and said, "But can I come?" I said, "We don't bar anybody at the door. If you want to come in." So what we're doing is we're working on a student summit. That student summit, we hope, is going to arm our student chapters with resources. Not only resources about what to do in these situations, how to work around these situations, how to fight back, how to stand up, and how to understand exactly what is accountable to you, what you should get from that university. In addition to that, there's also the scholarship issue, and we can talk about that separately. Yeah. But the reaches here go deep, because when they start to affect you as students, when they start to inhibit your ability to follow through with mission, people begin to think about, they get tired. They're like, why is this even worth it? Why am I doing this? Should I be doing something else? And we're trying to make sure that you have the full support of the organization, that we're telling you exactly what to do, that when things aren't working, you know where to go, and you know how to find the assistance to keep going, because it's there. It's there.
I just visited recently a school that is mainly, like you said, a white institution, and the students there for NHJ, they have this churro and fiesta party to take, interest of the other students and bring more members. But they actually encounter a huge support from their institution, because since this is coming, they start helping the students to be able to learn what they're going to be up against when they leave the school, and they are supporting them. So there's a lot of universities that are encountering, all of these different situations, but they are actually supporting the students. And the ones that I have experienced right now, the actual institution, the educational institution, is helping our students, teaching them how to be able to continue, because if they leave that school, they're going to be able to take those leadership skills they're learning there to be able to stand up for themselves. And I'm going to take a few seconds here and steal your go ahead. Your forum to promote this. We're actually going to have our first NHJ student chapter here in Loyola University. So please look for Ms. Michele right there with the green sweater, or find these folders, these flyers, to use the QR code and register, because, the Latino organization is not monolithic. We have a variety of people, so it doesn't matter if you're not 100% Latino, we welcome everybody. So that was my commercial break.
There you go. Nicole, have you heard any challenges from your student members?
We do work with the student chapters so that they can connect with their universities, but I think one of the biggest things that we do is make sure they're always connected with a geographic chapter. That's always kind of the first way in for a lot of AAJA members, and so even if there isn't necessarily a student chapter in Louisiana, for example, or at Loyola, we have a Florida chapter, we have an Atlanta chapter, and we always try to make sure that, or we have a Texas chapter, wherever they want to actually join, they can geographically, but then we also have affinity groups that are open for people in various identities and for various parts of the industry. So we'll have an affinity group for women and non-binary people, and then we'll have a sports task force in case, you're part of, you want to be a part of the sports journalism world. So there are always ways for those students to connect. And we want to make sure that they're connected to either a geographic chapter, an affinity group. So even when some of these students graduate, that there's somebody else who's looking out for that student chapter so that it can continue on.
Thank you. So we're going to do one more question before we close out. I think it's been a great conversation with you guys. And let's look to the future. And on this note, what advice would you give to young journalists of color entering this industry today, given the current landscape? I'll start with you, Nicole.
I would just say do the best journalism you can do. there's a lot of noise out there, but that also means there are a lot of good stories that only you can really report. You bring a lot to the industry because of who you are. I think some prior generations felt like maybe being of a certain race pigeonholed them into stories. And I'm really, really glad that we're at a place where so many journalists see the people that they are, the identities that they have as a strength, as an expertise, as a way to make sure that we can connect with the right communities, or that we can cover things as accurately and as strongly as possible. So just do the stories you want to do, and the success will come to you. It's a difficult time. There'll be a lot of long sleepless nights when you're first getting out there, but if you love journalism, stick to it, and it will be a really great ride.
What do you do?
Remember that as journalists, we are the messengers. We're not the message. We're not the story. Why I say that? Because it's really easy to get all this pain, get depressed, get sad. And the younger we are, the more sensitive we are. And you don't want to encounter a situation that you want to be in journalism, but you're totally demoralized, depressed, or thinking what I have done. If you keep in check the fact that we are the messenger, not the message, that's going to help you cope with the things that you don't like that are happening around you. And like I said before, you're a brand. You know, Coca-Cola, it's Coca-Cola. And we never say, oh, I think I'm the last Pepsi on the desert. No, I think I'm the last Coca-Cola in the desert. So if you handle and carry yourself like the best thing out there, that's what you're going to project when you leave this campus and you go to work in one of those big media companies.
You're in the right place. You are in the right place. And I say that because we're trying our best to figure it out. The people who've been in the game for a long time see an industry flipping and changing. And we knew at a certain time when print was giving way to radio and radio was giving way to TV. And this digital age has us all a little discombobulated. But I'm looking at you with your cell phones and I'm realizing nobody knows that digital age like you. You grew up in it. What we do as a profession is waiting for a game changer. That game changer is somebody not necessarily with 32 years in the business or 30-some years in the business or who's been everywhere and knows how it's done in each shop, but it's a person who's going to walk in with that original, authentic idea that makes somebody say, this is it. And because every time the game changed, every time we went from print to radio, they said, it's new, but it's not going to last. And it did. And television, it's new, but we like doing it this way. And it did. You are going to come up with an original idea that will last. It'll change the way we all see the game. It'll change the way we do things. And as a point and purpose, today I picked up the phone with one of the people who's in a corporate position. And I said to them, what do you need me to tell him? Like from your corporate position. He says we're looking at something interesting that we're rolling out called a news content creator. These are people who are going to be able to work seamlessly to present the news in spaces that we don't traditionally do it. You're the game changer. And guess what? We want you to change the game. I want to say I knew you. I want to say I remember that moment I saw them do that thing special and I went, oh, this is it. I want you to make sure that the truth doesn't die because we can't figure a new way to deliver the product.
Thank you for that. And you know, changing the game is important. And you know, we tell our students here to go out and do the journalism, do the work, and it will come to you. I want to give a round of applause to our three presidents here. And I'd like to thank the audience out there and watching the streaming. And if it's a very important conversation, I want to thank you for coming together, these three presidents, during this important time to have this discussion. And have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.